Hi, Mindsetters, and welcome to today's Grade 10 Life Sciences show. Today we have a special revision lesson on transport in animals. Enjoy. We have selected highlights from lessons shown earlier in the term to help you revise these terms' work. You can download your notes for today's show from learnextra.co.za/live. Now, it's time to get on with today's lesson. Please post all your comments and questions on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/LearnExtra. Or you can also follow us on Twitter @LearnExtra so we can help you with all your revision.
So the first question we ask, based on what we've taught you something now, immediately we're asking you the question. We're not leaving it to the end. We want to ask you the questions now while it is still fresh in your mind. The question talks about tabulating the structural and functional differences between the arteries and the veins. But notice this question talking about specific. Look at what it's talking about, the structural and functional differences between these three guys, arteries, veins, and capillaries. Now, remember when it says tabulate, you must draw a table, and we've already started with a table there, arteries, capillaries, and veins. And what we're going to do is going to look at one thing at a time. First of all, arteries carry blood away from the heart. Capillaries supply blood at tissue level, and veins supply blood back to the heart, as we've mentioned earlier. Secondly, in terms of the structure now, the arteries have a thick middle layer of involuntary muscles. Whereas the veins have a thin muscle layer. And the capillaries, as we showed you in a diagram, they don't have a middle layer. They have a single layer of endothelium tissue. The arteries have a narrow inner layer of endothelium, which reduces friction. Capillaries, they only have this endothelium, that's the only thing they have. And the veins have a larger diameter of the inner cavity lined with endothelium to reduce the friction. We're talking about the whole, the lumen itself and the inner layer there, okay? Arteries are situated deeper in the tissue to maintain body temperature. We don't want to lose the heat from the arteries. All right. All right, we'll come back to you. The veins are situated nearer the surface of the skin, so we can release some of the heat when it's coming back from the body, because it's a lot of there's a lot of heat that it picks up from the body, so it must need to lose some of that heat. And the capillaries are found, if this guy opens now, doesn't want to, okay, there we go. It's only found in the tissue level. It's not found elsewhere. In terms of the arteries, they do not have valve except the aorta and the pulmonary artery. These are the only two that have valves, and we'll talk about the valves a little later. The veins, we've told you already, they have mainly semilunar valves, and they are at regular intervals of the veins to prevent backflow of blood. And there's no valves present at all in a capillary. There wouldn't be a need for that. Blood is always under high pressure in an artery. If you have to cut an artery, the blood that comes out of there will spurt out, it will shoot out, because the blood in the artery is under pressure. Whereas in a vein, the blood is under low pressure because it's returning. It's far away from the pumping action of the heart. And the capillaries, the blood is under high pressure, where red blood cells are forced to flow through in single file. Why this is important? Because we need to push this blood through. And at the same time, we will talk about, when we talk about the lymphatic system, why this pressure in the capillaries is important. if we feel an artery, we will be able to feel a pulse as the blood flows. No pulse in the capillary, and no pulse can be detected very easily in a vein as well. Now, we've given you this diagram of the external structure, the diagram of the internal structure. Now, we're looking at this and we're saying, let's make it a question. Label the following diagram. Level 1. Remember, when you have any structure that you have to learn, the first thing people are going to ask you to do is to label the diagram. Next, they will ask you is functions of different parts. Then they want to take it at a higher level. They talk about significance of this and that. Why is this different to that, and so on. And later, they want to take it even higher than that. They'll say, predict what would happen if this is removed or that is removed, and so on. What are they really testing when they say predict? They're simply testing you the function of that part, because if it's not there, then that function will not take place. So let's label this diagram. You must look at the arrows when you are labeling the diagram. Let's look at the easy ones first. Remember, you've got to look at this diagram this way, so that would be the left-hand side, and this would be the right-hand side. So let's see what color will work best. Let's see the green. Green, good enough? Yeah, good. So this is the right-hand side. So that will be right, right. That will be left, left. What's on the top? Atrium. Right atrium, left atrium. What's at the bottom? Ventricles. Right ventricle, left ventricle. We can actually, why am I doing that and punishing you? Right, this is why we put these blocks here, atrium, and this would become, now let's see where we're pointing now. Difficult to say, all right, this one here would become the right ventricle. This would be the left atrium, and that would be the left ventricle. Good. So that's the most important parts. Right, now, what about this guy in the middle? That is called the septum. That separates right from left. Now let's take left. We'll go from the top now down, okay? So this one here, you can see the blood is coming into the right atrium and it's coming from the top. So this will be the superior vena cava. And then we come in here. This is this area here. That will be the valve. It's pointing to the valve. And because on the right-hand side, RST, we have the tricuspid valve. I'm just putting V for short now. And then we go this way. This guy is pointing to this valve here, or this valve here. That is the semilunar valves. And then we're moving further. This one is pointing to these valves here, left and left. Little boy, bicuspid. Remember, another word for bicuspid is mitral. This here would be the muscle wall. Going up, these are blood vessels that are entering the left atrium. That would be the pulmonary veins. And this one here is going from the right-hand side going out. So that will be the pulmonary artery. And this big one here is the aorta. In fact, this particular part is called the aortic arc. And that is the labels on the diagram. You need to know the labels. And you need to, how do we know what's the difference between the aorta and the pulmonary artery? Because they're looking very similar here. That's why I told you, we looked at it. Where is it coming from? It's coming from the right-hand side. So that's the pulmonary artery. This one here, follow it, follow. It's coming from the left ventricle. So that's the aorta. The aorta leaves the left ventricle. The pulmonary artery leaves the right ventricle. The pulmonary arteries come into the left atrium, and the superior and inferior vena cava, this one here, they enter the right atrium. So not only you need to know the names of the vessels, you must know where they're going to or where they're coming from. That is how you're going to distinguish between the different vessels. Provide the functions of the major blood vessels shown in this diagram. We need to talk about the functions. And we'll start with the vena cava. Their job is to return deoxygenated blood from all parts of the body to the right atrium. So the superior vena cava deals with the upper limbs, the hands, and the upper body. And the inferior vena cava deals with the remainder, the lower parts of the body, lower extremities. So all the deoxygenated blood, in the body is brought back to the heart, where to the right atrium via the vena cava. The aorta, it transports oxygenated blood from the heart to all parts of the body. Pulmonary artery transports deoxygenated blood from the heart to the lungs. By the way, pulmonary artery is the only artery in the body that transports deoxygenated blood. All other arteries transport oxygenated blood. The pulmonary veins transports oxygenated blood from the lungs to the heart, returning the blood from the lung to the heart. Now, just as I told you about the pulmonary artery, the pulmonary vein is the only veins, or are the only veins, that transport oxygenated blood. All other veins in the body transport deoxygenated blood. So those are the main blood vessels as we have named them. Now they say provide the name and functions of two other important blood vessels not shown in this diagram. There would have to be the coronary vessels, the coronary artery, which supplies the heart muscle, that should be heart muscle and tissue with oxygenated blood. We saw this when we saw the diagram of the external structure of the heart. And the coronary veins, we saw this also there, returns deoxygenated blood from the heart muscle to the right atrium. And this diagram shows you these vessels that I'm talking about. Why are you misbehaving? Good. There you go. Clearly on this diagram, we can see the blood vessels. The blue, the blue and the red. The blue would be coronary veins, the red would be coronary arteries. Remember, the heart muscle is also made up of living cells and tissues. So itself needs to be nourished to get food. So it must get the oxygenated blood from the heart. And itself produces waste. That waste must get back to the heart. From the heart, it must get transported to where it must be removed. Name and explain the significance of the valves found. Number one, between the right atrium and the right ventricle. RST, tricuspid valve. There we go. Tricuspid valve. At least I'm getting my answers right. Why are we playing with me today with these colors? Tricuspid valve. What's its job? What's its function? It prevents backflow of blood from the right ventricle to the right atrium. In other words, it allows blood to flow from atrium to ventricle, but it doesn't let blood go back up. The next one says between the left atrium and the left ventricle, that will be the bicuspid valve or mitral valve. Left little boy prevents backflow of blood from the left ventricle to the left atrium. The valves in the pulmonary artery are called semilunar valves, and their job is to prevent backflow of blood from the pulmonary artery to the right ventricle. And lastly, in the aorta, it's also semilunar valves, by the way. It's also semilunar valves, and they prevent backflow of blood from the aorta to the left ventricle. So mainly, it's about backflow. You need to know where it is, and it won't allow backflow between where it is and where it's going to. That's what we are saying. Very simple. Next question says, explain how the heart is protected. And I gave you lots of clues as we built up the lesson. And that's very easy. First of all, There we go. Fat tissue that is around the heart. Remember the word said explain. It didn't say list ways in which the heart is protected. Then we would only say what is in bold. But this question said explain. So you need to elaborate on what you're saying. So you're saying fat tissue around the heart. Why? It acts as a shock absorber. So explanation. Next one says the rib cage and sternum, they are made up of bone to protect the delicate heart from any physical damage. Further, the heart itself is surrounded by a membrane called the pericardium. It's a membrane which covers and protects the heart. It reduces friction as well when the heart beats. Question 3. Study the diagrammatic representation below showing a transverse section through a vein and an artery. So you have a vein and an artery. The first question says, which diagram, A or B, represents an artery? And the answer there would be A. Why do I say A? Simple. Because there is a thicker muscle layer in A than there is in B. And we're talking about layer 2. And we can also talk about a smaller lumen than there. And that is label 3 there in that thing there. Which blood vessel, A or B, has valves? Which one has valves? The answer has to be B. And why? Because to prevent backflow of blood, right? Now provide labels for parts number 1, 2, and 3. I'll do it on the diagram and then we'll open it up there. Number 3 we already spoke about, lumen. This one here we're talking about the muscle layer. Want to be more specific, we say smooth muscle. Okay, and number 1 would be the connective tissue. All right, and that covers us with that question there. Let's just open to see if Aslam was right. Connective tissue, smooth muscle, and lumen. On the button we are in terms of our answers. I'm hoping that helps you. The last question says, explain how the heart is suited for functions. I'm just going to open that up for you. And we spoke about all this already. Cardiac muscle has automatism, so the heart can beat without any nerves. It is richly supplied with blood vessels so that it can nourish itself. There's valves between the atria and ventricles. And it has a thick septum to separate left from right in terms of that. I'm hoping, guys, that this helps you to progress in what you are doing in your work. As promised last week, we are talking about looking at the real stuff. We are not talking about models. We are not talking about diagrams. We're talking of the real things. Now, what you see in my right hand holding up there is the windpipe or trachea. That's the front end. If I twist that around, behind you can see a muscular wall. That is the esophagus, guys. That is where your food goes down when you swallow it into your tummy. Now, we are not interested in that part today. Now, if you're going down with the trachea, you'll find on the right-hand side and on the left-hand side spongy-like structures, 2 of them. That's the right and left lung. And in between those lungs is the one thing that all men want to take from the woman.
Or you just want to take
heart.
from me.
Right? There you go, guys, live in front of you, a sheep's heart. Now, externally, if we look at the heart, you'll notice that I am not holding it up in any way. It is standing on its own there. It is tied up there. There's no bones in this particular specimen. So what is holding this heart in place here? Yes, you guessed right from last week. The blood vessels that connect it to the lungs, especially at this time, are still intact. So therefore, they're holding the heart in place. Apart from that, guys, can you see this white tissue that I'm holding up now? Yes, you can? Good. That is, yes, you guessed good again, fat. So the fat tissue surrounds the heart and other organs. And if you learned your grade 10 work properly, adipose tissue or fat cells serve as shock absorbers and protection around delicate organs. And there we have all of that right in front of you. Notice on the heart wall as well, there is some fat tissue there covering it as well. Now, I'm going to use a little tweezer, all right? And I'm going to pinch there for you. Now, you may not be able to see that very clearly, but I am sure you can see that. But now, that is the tough connective tissue surrounding the heart. And that is known as the pericardium. The pericardium. Now we're going to do a little bit of doctoring. We're going to be a surgeon. Megan?
Yes?
I'm
Can I
going to
come?
be a surgeon. If you want to come over,
Can I get my hands in these gloves?
you can.
You see this?
Now, what we're going to do, guys, the trick when you're working with the heart, first of all, when you ask the butcher for the heart, you ask for the heart with the lungs intact and ask them if they can, they mustn't cut the heart up in a bad way that damages the wall of the heart so you can't do what you want to do. So in this case, this butcher was kind enough to do that for us. So we have the whole system here. And when we're cutting, Megan,
Yes.
we cut as far away from the heart as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we do that?
So you don't damage it?
Yes,
get
and
any
we want the blood vessels.
Mm-hmm.
We want as many of the blood vessels as possible. Oops. Lucky this is not a live patient, guys. I'm
You'd
not
be a very bad
qualified. Please
surgeon.
don't try this alone at home. We should give that warning first, eh?
Yeah.
There we go. So this part is the easy part.
Dang.
We're cutting away. Look at all the fat that came out from there, Megan.
Fatty heart that
Right?
was.
All this
That
fat
was a
is
nice
around there.
sheep.
Okay, look at the lungs. You can see, I don't know if we can zoom that far, Wilson. You can see some blood vessels there. Megan, you can see that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That would be the pulmonary artery veins. This would be coming back to the heart. We can't go into that right now. Okay, guys, this is where we are. So that is the size of the sheep heart. Your heart, Megan, more or less the size of your
My
fist.
hands are little though, look. So
There you go. Women, I must tell you, have smaller hearts.
yeah. Not all the
We
time.
know that. They
I have a
don't want to
big
share
heart.
anything. Right? Okay, there we go, Megan. So if we look at the outside of the heart, you've already seen the pericardium I've shown you. I've shown you the fat. And now if you look at these lines, I'm not sure if you're going to get that very clearly, but if you have a model or a diagram, there would be red and blue lines drawn on the diagram. These are those lines that we are talking about running along the heart muscle. Those are known as the coronary vessels. Get coronary arteries and coronary
Vessels.
veins. Good. Now, Megan,
Yeah.
can you see we got some big guns here on the top here?
Yeah, there's like
1,
holes.
2, 3. Big guys. This guy here, this guy, can I get a straw, Megan?
Do you want an
some
open straw?
Yeah, there we go. Good. So, Megan, if we post that through, you notice it's coming to this flap-like structure on the top. That flap-like structure is the atrium, and this would be the right atrium. Notice, remember mindsetters, last week we spoke about the atria are on top and the ventricles are at the bottom. So this guy that's coming in there, it's coming from the top, Megan, yes?
Yeah.
So that would be the superior vena cava. Unfortunately, the inferior vena cava has been severed. It's not here. So that already gives us a clue, guys, as to which is the right-hand side of the heart and which is the left-hand side of the heart. So we know now that this is the right-hand side of the heart and that would be the left-hand side of the heart. Good. You can take that straw out there now. There's another big vessel.
Mm.
And this vessel, we're going to see if we can get in. There. Not so good. Let's take the other guy. We got a backup for this.
Yeah.
Got another big guy there. And this guy will work for us.
Ugh.
Just watch. I don't mess you, Megan.
He's leaking.
He's leaking or a bleeding heart.
Yeah. There we
Must be
go.
you broke
It's
the
going.
guy's heart. Okay. Megan, tell the viewers now, where's that going to? To my left. Watch. I'm going to poke it through.
Oh, I can't
Is it
believe I'm
going
actually
to my
holding
left
this.
or to the right?
To the left.
To the left. Yes. So that would be the aorta, guys. The big one right on the top, that would be the aorta. I'm going to point it this way so you can get a better view. It's a big blood vessel on the top. And this aorta makes an arc. So we call it the aortic arc. Some of the vessels from the aorta go upwards to the top, to the brain and upper parts of the body. And the others go to the bottom end. Remember, this is the main supply of
Blood.
oxygenated blood
There we go.
and food. Right, good. Then next to that, Megan, you see another guy there?
Yep, there's another
Right,
one.
so we poke another hole. Mind the pun on holes. I'm a bad guy, shouldn't be on TV. Eh?
Nah, he kills me, literally.
Right, now Megan, where's that coming through? Can you see? No, you
No.
can't. I'll be lying. We would be lying to them if we told them it came through
It's trying to
somewhere.
come through. I think it's coming in there.
There you go. On the
It's trying to come through on the right.
on the right-hand side. So the one big vessel that comes to the right actually doesn't come
Doesn't
to the
go
right,
through,
but
yeah.
it's going from the right. That would be the pulmonary arteries. The pulmonary arteries take deoxygenated blood from the right-hand side of the heart to the two lungs, left and right. Good. So we have now looked at some of the major blood vessels that we could see. Good, I think we can. Yes, Megan, can you see these guys at the back?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to try and point this to the front so the viewers can see where the straw is going in. There you got another vessel coming in there. That vessel is coming to the left atrium. So it would be the pulmonary veins. So let's recap quickly, Megan,
Sure.
without looking at the model.
There's so many.
Can you remember some of the blood vessels
No,
at least?
just go. I know there's one that goes right through, one that goes on the right,
Right,
one that goes on the left,
right.
and then one that doesn't go through.
So Megan would get half the marks only.
Sorry, okay.
Because she's only told us the functions of those blood vessels. She
It
hasn't
didn't
given us the
explain.
name.
Okay.
Okay, so the one that Megan says that goes to the left,
Mm-hmm.
that would be the aorta. The aorta takes oxygenated blood from the heart, all parts of the body. The one that Megan says goes to the right-hand side, that is the pulmonary artery. Takes deoxygenated blood to the lungs. Then we saw the superior vena cava, the first one we saw, that went into the right atrium. That one brings deoxygenated blood from the upper parts of the body to the heart. And last we looked at the pulmonary veins, which bring oxygenated blood from the lungs to the heart. Are we all cool with that,
I
guys?
was just mentioning it so you could explain. That
Good,
was
good, good.
actually my intention.
You're helping me, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Got it.
Now, guys,
We're doing this ox.
we're going to
okay.
take the same
This is
organ from a different animal. Now, mindset is, I mean,
Let me hold that little one, and you can
Okay.
hold the big one.
don't break that little heart.
I'll hold it in my hands carefully.
Carefully, eh? Now, Megan, show your heart, and let me show. You show mine, I'll show mine. You show yours, I'll show mine. You can't show mine, right?
No.
Okay. So Megan has a sheep heart in her hand. I've got the ox heart in my hand. Guys, we don't have to tell you that the ox heart is much bigger than the sheep heart. Again, the ox is a bigger animal, and therefore it would need a bigger pump. You can't use a small generator to run a whole factory.
No.
It may run my house or Megan's house, but it may not run a whole factory, yes?
Yeah.
You'd need much more power for that. So you need a bigger pump. So therefore, this is what you need to look at. Now, in this particular diagram, why I brought this one along is to show you a little bit more clear some of the organs that we are, organs, this is the organ. The heart is the organ, right? If we cut the heart up, this middle part here, this big muscular wall, that's the septum, which divides the heart into right and left. I must watch left and right in this
Yeah,
case, right?
yeah.
Now notice, mindsetters, that the right-hand side wall is nice and thin, whereas the left-hand wall is very thick. This left-hand wall represents the left ventricle, because the left ventricle has to pump blood to all parts of the body. It needs to be thicker, suitability of the heart. The right ventricle, on the other hand, its neighbor, has to only pump blood to the left and right lungs. Now, when we held the whole goody gadget together, the system,
Yeah.
what was that again, Wilson? Malamahudu.
He laughs.
Mahudu, eh? Right, okay. When we held it up for you, you could see where the heart is in relation to the lungs, right next door, right in between. So it doesn't have to pump very far. So therefore, its walls are thin. Now, what's also interesting in this diagram, or this specimen, I keep making a mistake, are the clarity of the valves. And because that is on the left-hand side, little boy, that would be the bicuspid valve there. And on the right-hand side, there you go. On the right-hand side, I'm going to open that up nicely for you. You can see the tricuspid valve. Now, obviously, this thing has been butchered badly, so you cannot see the three cusps. The reason why we call this the tricuspid valve, because it has three cusps attached to the muscular papilla. And this is one is called a bicuspid because it has two cusps. Now, the cusps have been damaged. All right.
This poor ox.
Poor ox, yeah. Right. Now, guys, I'm going to show you the size of the atria compared to the ventricles. When we draw the diagrams and we show you a model, we do not do justice. This little tissue here in my hand now, that's the left atrium. And this is the right atrium. So very small, Megan. Let's look at the heart that you have,
Okay.
where the atria are still quite intact. Good. Right, so we said that was the aorta, right? So that would be the left. There we go, guys. There's the one atrium there. And the other atrium on this side. So, guys, you can really see that the atria are very small compared to the ventricles. Why? Because the atria only receive blood. They don't have to pump anything anywhere. Whatever goes from the atria to the ventricles goes there by gravity. Unless, of course, you are doing the headstand, Megan.
Like you
didn't see
did the
that,
other day.
yeah?
I saw
So
that. I
when you
just
do the
wasn't
headstand, the
here.
blood has to go the other way. That's a problem.
I'm gonna
And
leave you for
in
5
that
seconds.
sense, we have a problem. But guys, I'm hoping that you got to see every bit of part that we could show you in these diagrams. And we had everything ready for you. I'm just going to open the inside of the sheep heart as well. A nice view here. The left ventricle with the bicuspid valves. And on this side, the right ventricle, thin wall, with the tricuspid valve. Now, guys, we posted something on the page for you to show you another way of dissecting the same organ, the heart. You can cut through the atria from the top and through the other atria on the top. You flap it open and you can see the same thing. That's a different way you can try that if you have that at school, and you can do that as well. I'm hoping, guys, that we've covered what we needed to cover here. I'm sure you saw all the blood vessels that I have shown you here. Clearly, pulmonary artery, pulmonary veins, aorta, and the superior vena cava. I must tell you, the superior vena cava generally in specimens, it's not very clear. Today, this particular heart came out very nicely. Ah, Megan, because I cut it, I suppose. Right? So in terms of that, guys, remember, you've seen the real thing now. You're not looking at a model, a two-dimensional model. You saw the 3D actual specimen. If you can't remember it after this, then I don't know.
Welcome back from the break. I can't believe that spring is here, and soon it'll be time to plan for your final exams. Don't stress, exam school is coming in term 4. We'll be here to support you all the way. But for now, let's get back to our revision lesson.
The next concept is blood pressure. What is this blood pressure that we are talking about? First of all, what causes the blood to have a pressure? You have a tap at home, yeah? You open the tap, what happens? Water gushes out from there. The more you open the tap, the more forceful will that water come. Now, if you had a pump behind that, and if you had a pump setting, and if you set the pump at a very low setting, then obviously whatever was pushing the water out would be low pressure. And the minute you turn the machine up in terms of output, it's going to push the water even more forcefully out. So the same thing happens in the heart, or in our circulation system rather. The heart is the pump that we're talking about. And the faster this heart beats, contracts and relaxes, the faster the blood is going to flow. And this fastness of the blood flowing is its pressure. If the blood flows slowly, it has a lower pressure. If it's flowing very fast, it has a higher pressure. And that's what we are talking about. So blood pressure is the result of the pumping action of the heart and the size of the blood vessels. So the other factor, remember there's another variable here. In the same way, think about, go back to your house now. If you have your tap wide open, and you have a hose pipe without any tap in the front there, and you just pour it, the water will just sort of do something like that. But if you put your finger on the opening of the hose pipe, you sort of make the opening slightly narrower, what do you notice? The water starts shooting. So what have you done? You have decreased the diameter of the hose pipe, and that increased the pressure of the water coming out. So a narrowing of the blood vessels increases blood pressure. Now this is important for us in terms of our health issues that we're going to talk about later as well. Okay? So what happens is, as this blood is pumping, the pressure builds up in the arteries. And the pressure is important, because if there's no pressure, if you're going to turn that motor off, the water won't reach where it's supposed to reach. In the same way, if your heart is not doing the pumping action, the blood won't reach where it's supposed to reach. Remember, from this heart, look where the heart is. It's in this area here. The blood must go to that finger right on that side, and the little toes at the bottom there. All these areas must receive blood all the time. So the pressure is important for that. Now, how do we measure pressure? Pressure is generally measured by a doctor with a sphygmomanometer. Wow. You want to talk of a big word, Megan?
Say that to me.
Sphygmomanometer.
Woo! Okay, I can't say that word. I just mastered circulatory.
We'll call it a pressure thing.
Pressure thing.
Okay. All right. So this is what the sphygmomanometer does. It measures blood pressure. Okay. And you've probably went to a doctor and he's done this. What happens is your arm is exposed. The cuff goes around your arm slightly above the elbow, and they start pumping it until this artery is closed. So the artery is not pumping anymore. And they open it slowly, and they notice when the blood starts flowing again. And they take a reading, and then they take another reading a little bit later, and that's how you get your blood pressure. So what is recorded? The two numbers are recorded, and recorded in a way that's normally one number above another one. Like this one here is given you, 117/76 millimeter mercury. In other words, it's dealing with the pressure in that instrument. So the first number, the top number, this one here, is the systolic number. It is usually the higher of the two. Systolic, contraction, so the pressure would be higher in that time. Measures the pressure in the arteries when the heart beats, when the heart muscle contracts during systole. The ventricles will be doing that. When the ventricles contract and push in the blood, you're getting that reading. Then you get the diastolic measurement, is when the heart is relaxing, diastole. as we said. So obviously the pressure is at its lowest when the heart is not contracting at this stage. And that is what you need to have. Now, average, let's see, I think we have something on the next one. Yeah. A little higher. So, when we're talking about blood pressure, generally the average blood pressure should be 120 over 80. Your systolic should be 120 and your diastolic blood pressure should be 80. It will fluctuate around that amount. Okay? But either number goes higher or too low, too high or too low. Either number, the bottom number or the top number, is not good for you. So we talk about hypertension when the blood pressure is higher than normal. And we can also talk about hypotension when the blood pressure is lower than normal. By the way, Megan and I were chatting earlier, and I was telling her that they are equally dangerous.
Yes.
Both low blood pressure and high blood pressure
He
can
said
result in a
I must eat
stroke.
a lot of salt extra, or just carry salt with
Tell
me.
them why, Megan, that you have to eat salt. Because you have?
Low blood pressure.
Yes, you have low blood pressure. So she needs to have salt. Salt intake will raise the blood pressure. But at the same time, on your side now, if your blood pressure is high, then what would you tell the person then, Megan?
Still, would you still eat salt?
What would you think?
I
If you
would.
wanted to raise your blood pressure, we're giving you salt. So
So
if you
don't
have high,
eat a lot of salt.
that's
yeah.
right. So you've got to reduce your salt intake. So a person who has hypertension should not be having too much of salt. Good. So high blood pressure can be aggravated by diet, and there's the sentence there, like too much salt. All right. Also, by all the other junk food that we're eating, because what happens with all the oily food we're having, sometimes deposits are made on the blood vessel. And what does that do? It narrows the blood vessel. So when it narrows the blood vessel, your blood pressure will go up. So that's also no good. High blood pressure can sometimes go undetected. It's called the silent killer, and may eventually lead to death. There we go, the silent killer. What increases blood pressure? Blood pressure is increased by smoking and excess alcohol intake. Stress is the number one in that. How's my cartoon there, Megan?
I'm a little stressed right now. Just turn around and leave quietly so no one gets hurt.
Okay. Sometimes we have an adrenaline surge. In other words, again, it'll be related to stress, excitement, fear, anxiety. The adrenaline will pump in, and that also will make your heart beat faster. And when your heart beats faster, your blood pressure will increase. The grade 12s will know a lot about the adrenaline. When you get to grade 12, you'll be talking about adrenaline, and you'll understand what we're saying here now as well. Water retention, if we keep too much water in our body, the blood pressure will also go up. Poor diet, obviously, and we've spoken that before, which has high cholesterol. Obesity is another one, and all that goes together with poor diet and all the junk food that we are talking about. And lastly, if you are not very active, you have a lack of exercise, on the treadmill all the time. If you're not on the treadmill, if you have a sedentary work, even when you are there, you youngsters sitting most of the time with your iPods, iPads, and all the IELTS that you have with you, and you're not going outside, what happens
So
is,
true.
instead of going out to have some fun, you now have the fun coming onto your screen in front of you. So you are very inactive, many of you, okay? And that is not healthy. You're starting your life the wrong footing. At your age, you should be outdoors. You should be balancing between that game. I'm not saying don't play those games. I'm not saying don't use the iPods or the iPads and the whatever else's. But at the same time, you've got to balance your lifestyle. Do a little bit of walking. Walk around the block. Walk around your house. Walk to school. Whatever you can do. Ride a bicycle. Play some soccer outside or netball or whatever you can play outside. But have fun outdoors as well. Good. That takes us to the lymphatic system. I'm just going to introduce that very quickly. The lymphatic system is a circulation system that runs parallel to our blood circulatory system. So we call it the secondary transport system. Its job is mainly to return tissue fluid back to the heart. there's tissue fluid around the cells. If that stays there, they're going to swell and it's going to be poisonous and so on. We need that substance to be taken away from the cells and brought back to the heart. Put whatever needs to be gotten rid of will go out via the excretory system and so on. And here we have a diagram showing us how the two systems work together. There's the lymphatic system here. Coming out from the capillary end, we're having a lymph vessel. Lymph vessel goes past some lymph nodes and it ends up into the superior vena cava and so on, and it will come into the right atrium, bringing back deoxygenated blood full of waste back to the heart, and this then will be distributed from the heart to where it needs to go. For example, the carbon dioxide will go to the lungs, the urea and uric acid will go to the kidneys, and we'll get rid of them that way. And in that way, the blood circulation continues. It is made up of lymph nodes. We showed that on the diagram. The lymph nodes are actually little nodules along the length of the lymphatic system that slow down any infection. One of the first lymph nodes that we have are the tonsils. The tonsils, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, whatever you want to call yourself, is your first line of defense. That's your border post. So as far as possible, if you don't have to take it out, don't take it out, unless your soldiers have joined the enemy. In that case, you'll have to take them out. But as far as possible, hang on to those tonsils, because whatever is going through the nasal passage and the mouth goes past that area first. So that's the first end where any foreign intruder is stopped in its tracks and disposed of by the tonsils. Then we have lymph vessels. Obviously, any system, circulatory system, must have vessels to transport this fluid, and the fluid inside these vessels is called lymph. Now watch what has happened. We had blood. When the blood, by pressure in the arterioles and the capillaries, leaks out, we have tissue fluid. In other words, in our cells, remember we said at the beginning, we have a closed blood system. Closed blood system means that the blood never leaves the blood vessels. So what leaves the blood vessels? Some fluid leaks out. This is known as tissue fluid. This tissue fluid then is reabsorbed either on the capillary end and it becomes blood again, or most of it is reabsorbed on the lymph end on this side here, and it is then called lymph. So one fluid, three names. Blood became tissue fluid, became lymph, and when it gets back to the heart, it's called blood again. Okay? Carrying on with our system, there's how it flows in the body. We're not going to go into too much detail there. Let's just see, here's the lymph vessel. Notice they have blind endings. They have blind endings. They're not like our blood circulatory system that's a complete cycle. They have a blind endings in the tissue, and from there diffusion takes place, and the lymph will then flow in that direction back to the heart. Okay, let's move on. So what actually is the function of the lymphatic system then? First function we've been singing about all the time, and that is it collects tissue fluid and returns it to the blood. I also told you earlier that it will help you to fight infections. How? Acting as a filter, first of all, and destroying the microorganisms. So as the microorganisms are going, they get trapped in a lymph node, and the antibodies are then released. The soldiers, the troops are let out, fight these guys, and they destroy them. And finally, they also mature and store lymphocytes. Lymphocytes, white blood cells that will help us to fight against any foreign intruders. They also help in the digestive system by digesting fat away from the intestine. When you digest fat in the intestine, the lacteals, that are the basic vessels that are found there, will take the fat or fatty acids and glycerol into the heart system.
Well, unfortunately, grade 10s, we have come to the end of today's show. But thank you very much for joining us and for chatting with me during the show. Remember, you can always visit our website, learnextra.co.za/live to get all the notes and to watch the videos from the term. If you're stuck on any questions, don't hesitate to post them on helpdesk at learnextra.co.za/helpdesk. From us to you, keep learning more and never give up. Peace.